Jamie Chun pressed his nose against the reinforced titanium glass viewing port, watching the creature that had haunted his dreams for 3 weeks. The Void Stalker hung suspended in its containment field, like a nightmare made flesh 20 meters. Of undulating obsidian tentacles surrounding a central mass that pulsed with erratic crimson light. Its surface was scarred with the marks of countless failed escape attempts, and its movements were jerky, desperate. Still staring at that thing? Dr. Sarah Martinez approached, her security badge jangling against her lab coat. As Kepler Station's head of xenobiology, she'd worked alongside Jamie's parents for years. Your mom and dad wouldn't be happy knowing you're down here. Jamie didn't turn away. Why does it keep hitting the barrier in the same spot? Because it's insane. Void stalkers always go mad in captivity. That's why we maintain the neural dampeners, to keep it from driving the rest of us crazy with its psychic screaming. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Come on, kiddo. The hydroponics bay has those new earth strawberries you like. But Jamie lingered, studying the creature's repetitive movements. It wasn't random violence. There was a pattern, almost. Like ... communication. The bioluminescent patches along its tentacles flared in sequence. 3 quick pulses, 2 long ones, then silence. Over and over, the station around them hummed with activity. Kepler Station wasn't just a research facility. It was a bustling hub where traders, diplomats, and scientists from dozens of species converged. The main promenade featured restaurants, serving cuisine from across the galaxy, while the observation decks offered stunning views of the binary star system they orbited. Children from various worlds played in the recreation areas, their laughter echoing through corridors that had been designed to feel more like a city than a sterile laboratory. Jamie's parents were attending the Galactic Xenobiology Conference. In the station's grand amphitheater, where the galaxy's brightest minds gathered to share discoveries about alien life. He'd been stuck here for 3 weeks, supposedly enjoying the educational opportunity of seeing cutting-edge research in action. What he'd actually discovered was that adults were terrible at actually seeing things. Dr. Martinez, he said carefully, what did Void Stalkers eat before we captured them? She paused, her expression growing troubled. We're not entirely sure. They're found in the deep void between star systems, areas where conventional life shouldn't exist. Some theories suggest they feed on cosmic radiation. Others think they're predators that hunt ships. Why? Jamie watched as the creature's light patterns shifted from angry red to something that almost looked like ... ness. What if they're not trying to escape? What if they're trying to tell us something? Jamie, I know you're bored, but please don't romanticize that thing. It's killed 17 researchers over the past 30 years. The only reason we can study it safely is because of the barriers and neural dampeners. She tried to steer him away from the viewing board. Come on, let's get you some real food. As they walked toward the lift, Jamie glanced back. The creature had stopped its rhythmic pounding and was now floating motionless in the center of its prison. For just a moment, he could have sworn it was watching him through the reinforced glass, not with hunger or rage, but with something. That looked disturbingly like hope. That night, lying in his parents' guest quarters, Jamie couldn't shake the image. The station's recycled air carried the faint scent of the hydroponics bay, where earth plants grew alongside alien flora in carefully controlled environments. Outside his window, the binary stars cast shifting shadows across his ceiling, and somewhere in the depths of the facility, the Void Stalker waited in its cage, against every warning he'd received. Jamie made a decision that would change everything. The station's corridors were dimly lit during the night cycle, emergency lighting casting long shadows as Jamie crept through the research levels. He'd memorized the guard rotation security. Was lighter during conferences, when most personnel were attending presentations or socializing in the diplomatic quarters. The half-eaten sandwich in his pocket felt like it. weighed 10 kilograms. The containment facility was normally bustling with activity, but at 0300 hours, only the automated systems hummed in the darkness. Jamie's heart hammered as he approached. The viewing chamber. The void stalker floated in its prison, its bioluminescent patterns dim and sluggish. Up close, he could see details that the briefing Hollis had never captured. The creature's skin wasn't completely black, but rather a deep purple that seemed to absorb light. Its tentacles weren't smooth, but covered in microscopic cilia that moved like wheat in a breeze. "Hello," Jamie whispered, feeling incredibly stupid. The creature's light patterns flickered, just slightly. Jamie pulled out his sandwich real turkey. From Earth, lettuce grown in the station's hydroponic gardens, and his mother's favorite mustard. He'd been saving it for later, but something about the creature's stillness made him think of his own loneliness when his parents worked late. The feeding port was clearly marked with warnings in 17 languages, but it was designed for emergency use, to deliver medical supplies or monitoring equipment. Jamie's hands shook as he accessed the simple mechanical override. The small chamber cycled open with a soft hiss. He placed the sandwich inside and sealed. The port, the delivery system activated, and the food was transported through a series of sterile chambers. Before emerging in the creature's containment field, nothing happened for several minutes. Then, slowly, one of the creature's smaller tentacles extended toward the sandwich. It didn't grab the food instead, it hovered just above it. And Jamie watched in fascination as the tentacle's surface rippled with new patterns of light. Soft blues and purples replaced the angry reds he'd seen before. The creature consumed the sandwich not by devouring it, but by dissolving it into its cellular structure. The process was beautiful and alien, like watching a flower bloom in reverse. And as the food integrated into its body, the creature's entire form began to pulse with a gentle, rhythmic light. Suddenly, the containment chamber filled with the most beautiful sound Jamie had ever heard, a low harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. It wasn't the psychic screaming that Dr. Martinez had described, but something like whale song mixed with the deep notes of a pipe organ. The neural dampeners immediately responded, flooding the chamber with suppression fields, and the song cut off abruptly. The creature's lights dimmed to their previous angry red, and it retreated to the far corner of its prison. Jamie's eyes filled with tears he didn't understand. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." He stumbled back to his quarters, but sleep was impossible. The brief moment of connection had revealed something profound. The creature wasn't insane or violent. It was starving, not just for food, but for companionship. The realization hit him like a physical blow. They weren't containing a monster. They were torturing a sentient being. The next morning, Jamie sat in the commissary, picking at his breakfast, while his parents discussed quantum field theories at the next table. Around him, the station's diverse population went about their daily routines, Altarian traders negotiating shipping contracts, Centauri diplomats reviewing cultural exchange protocols, and human researchers debating the ethics of consciousness. Studie. As Dr. Martinez approached their table, her expression troubled. Strange energy readings from the containment facility last night. The monitoring systems detected some kind of harmonic resonance around 0300 hours, but it was so brief, we couldn't get a proper analysis. Jamie's father, Dr. Chun, looked up from his datapad. Could be equipment malfunction. These old stations sometimes develop acoustic resonances. Maybe, Dr. Martinez said, but her eyes found Jamie's. Or maybe our guest was trying to communicate. Jamie forced himself to meet her gaze, hoping his guilt didn't show. But as the adults returned to their scientific discussions, he was already planning his next visit to the containment facility. The creature needed more than food, it needed hope. And despite every warning, every rational argument against it, Jamie knew he was the only one willing to provide it. For 3 days, Jamie continued his secret visits. Each time, he brought different fruits from the commissary, protein bars from the vending machines, even flowers from the hydroponics. Bay. The creature accepted everything with the same gentle dissolution process. And each feeding session brought new discoveries. The Void Stalker was intelligent, brilliantly so. It had learned to modulate its bioluminescence to avoid triggering. The neural dampeners, communicating through subtle color shifts that the monitoring systems couldn't detect. When Jamie brought it a small potted plant, the creature's reaction was extraordinary. Its entire form brightened with what could only be described as joy, and for several minutes it cradled the plant with infinite care. But it was the station's flowers that triggered the real breakthrough. ****. Jamie had brought a cutting from his mother's prized orchida, hybrid Earth Centauri species that bloomed in impossible shades of blue and silver. The moment the creature touched it, everything changed. The flower didn't dissolve instead. It began to grow, its petals expanding and new buds forming at impossible speed. The creature's song returned, but this time it was different, more complex, like a symphony building toward crescendo. The neural dampeners activated immediately. But something was wrong. The suppression fields, designed to contain psychic energy, were instead amplifying something else, a harmonic frequency that resonated through the station's superstructure. In the hydroponics bay, plants began growing at accelerated rates. In the medical wing, patients recovering from surgery reported sudden improvements in their conditions. Throughout the station, people stopped what they were doing and listened to a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Dr. Martinez was the first to arrive at the containment facility, followed by a team of security officers and Jamie's parents. They found Jamie standing before the viewing port, tears streaming down his face as he watched the creature tend to a garden that hadn't existed an hour before. The containment field was filled with impossible plants flowers that bloomed in vacuum, vines that grew in fractal patterns, and trees that seemed to be made of living light. "Jamie, what have you done?" his mother whispered. Before he could answer, the creature turned toward them. Its bioluminescent patterns were no longer chaotic or angry, but arranged in complex, beautiful sequences that hurt to look at directly. And when it sang, the sound bypassed the neural dampeners entirely, speaking directly to some deeper part of their consciousness. In that moment, everyone in the room understood. The creature wasn't trying to communicate, it was trying to heal. The psychic screaming that had driven researchers mad wasn't an attack, but the sound of a being in profound spiritual agony. Void stalkers weren't predators or monsters. They were gardeners, caretakers who had once tended to life throughout the galaxy. Commander Torres, the station's military liaison, was the first to break the spell. "Shut it down," he ordered. "Full neural suppression, maximum intensity." "Wait," Dr. Martinez said, her voice filled with wonder. "Look at the biological readings. The creature isn't just healing itself, it's healing everything around it. The plants, the station's life support systems, even the water recycling units are operating at 200% efficiency. But Torres was already activating the emergency protocols. I don't care if it's performing miracles. We have orders to contain this thing, not let it transform the station into some kind of alien garden." The maximum neural suppression hit the creature like a physical blow. Its song cut off abruptly. The magical plants withered and died, and the creature collapsed to the floor of its containment field. For a moment, Jamie thought they had killed it. Then he saw the faint pulse of light that indicated it was still alive barely. "You're torturing it," Jamie said, his voice steady despite his tears. "All this time, you've been torturing something that just wants to help." Dr. Martinez knelt beside him, her own eyes wet. "Jamie, what else did you see? What else did it show?" "You?" Jamie looked around the room, at the security officers with their weapons drawn, at the scientists with their instruments, at the adults who were so afraid of what they didn't understand that they would rather destroy it than learn from it. "It showed me that there are others," he said quietly. "Hundreds of them, scattered across the galaxy. And they're all dying because they can't hear each other's songs." The implications hit everyone simultaneously. If Jamie was right, if void stalkers were actually benevolent beings who had been driven mad by isolation, then humanity had been committing genocide through ignorance. But outside the containment facility, alarms were beginning to sound. The creature's brief song had been detected by deep space monitors, and something was responding. Something was coming. Asterisk, the first ship appeared on the station sensors 18 hours later, a sleek vessel of unknown design that seemed to bend light around itself. It was followed by 2 more, then a dozen, then a fleet of craft that defied conventional physics. They took up position around Kepler Station, not threatening, but clearly waiting. In the diplomatic quarters, representatives from 3 major galactic powers had arrived via emergency transport. Admiral Reeves of the Terran Federation sat across from Ambassador Zeth Kar of the Centauri Alliance and High Consul Vith of the Altarian Trade Consortium. The tension in the room was palpable. The energy signature detected from this station matches nothing in our databases, Admiral Reeves said, his weathered face grim. "Our xenobiologists believe you may have triggered some kind of weapon." Dr. Martinez, representing the research team, shook her head. "With respect, Admiral, the readings suggest the opposite. We're detecting massive improvements in biological systems throughout the station. Whatever happened, it was beneficial, not harmful." "Then explain the fleet surrounding us," Ambassador Zeth Kar interjected, his 4 eyes glowing with suspicion. "Ships that appear to be composed of living tissue, responding to your beneficial energy signature." Jamie sat in the corner, officially ignored by the adults, but listening to every word. His parents had tried to send him to his quarters, but Dr. Martinez had insisted he stay. His unique connection to the creature might be crucial to understanding what was happening. The mystery deepened when the first communication came from the alien fleet. It wasn't transmitted through conventional channels, but rather sung directly into the minds of everyone on the station. The voice was hauntingly beautiful, speaking in harmonics that conveyed meaning without words. "The gardener awakens, the song returns. We who have waited in the darkness between stars offer ourselves in service to the great growing." Commander Torres immediately put the station on high alert, but the alien ships made no aggressive moves. Instead, they began to sing a chorus that harmonized with the suppressed creature in the containment facility. Despite the neural dampeners, the combined song was powerful enough to trigger another burst of accelerated growth throughout the station. It was then that the truth began to emerge. The alien fleet wasn't composed of ships at all, but of void stalkers themselves, fully mature beings who had learned to travel between stars by becoming living vessels. They had been searching the galaxy for their lost kin, following faint psychic echoes and hoping to find survivors of whatever catastrophe had scattered their species. Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief xenarchaeologist, had been working around the clock to analyze the new data. She burst into the diplomatic meeting with a data pad full of revelations. "I've been correlating the harmonic frequencies with archaeological records from dead worlds throughout the galaxy," she announced. "The same patterns appear in the ruins of 12 different civilizations, all of which died out roughly 10,000 years ago. But they didn't die from war or plague. They died from ecological collapse." She activated a holographic display showing a star map. Every one of these worlds shows evidence of massive biological diversity, followed by sudden ecosystem failure. But there's more buried in the ruins. We find references to the singers who tend the gardens of space and the dark ones who heal the wounds between worlds. The implications were staggering. Void stalkers weren't just gardeners. They were galactic-scale ecosystem engineers, beings who had once maintained the biological balance of entire star systems. Their disappearance had triggered a cascade of environmental disasters that had destroyed civilizations across the galaxy. "They're not here to harm us," Jamie said, finding his voice. "They're here to fix what we've broken." But not everyone was convinced. A new group had arrived on the station, the Heralds of the Void, a secretive organization that had been tracking Void Stalker sightings for decades. Led by a charismatic figure known only as the Archon, they believed that Void Stalkers were divine beings whose return would herald a new age of cosmic consciousness. The Archon was a tall, pale human whose eyes held an unsettling intensity. "The boy understands what the politicians and scientists cannot," he told the assembled diplomats. "We are witnessing the resurrection of the galaxy's true caretakers. Humanity's role is not to study or contain them, but to serve them." "Serve them how?" Admiral Reeves demanded. The Archon smiled. "By freeing them from their prisons, by allowing them to resume their sacred work, by accepting that we are not the galaxy's dominant species, but merely temporary gardeners in the cosmic garden." The room erupted in arguments. Some saw the void, stalkers as humanity's salvation, others as an existential threat. But Jamie was focused on something else. The creature in the containment facility was growing weaker, despite the presence of its kin. The neural dampeners were killing it, slowly but surely. "We have to turn off the suppression fields," he said, his voice cutting through the adult arguments. "It's dying." Dr. Martinez checked her instruments and paled. "He's right. The creature's biological functions are failing. The neural dampeners are interfering with some kind of essential process." "Absolutely not," Commander Torres said. "If we lower the dampeners, that thing could influence everyone on the station." "It's already influencing everyone on the station." Jamie shot back. "The difference is whether we let it heal us or force it to die trying." The debate raged for hours, but it was ultimately settled by the Void Stalkers themselves. The alien fleet began to sing in harmony, and their combined voices were powerful enough to resonate through the station's hull. The neural dampeners overloaded and shut down, and suddenly the creature in the containment facility was free to add its voice to the cosmic chorus. What happened next would be remembered as the day the galaxy began to heal. The moment the neural dampeners failed, the Void Stalkers' song erupted through Kepler Station with the force of 1,000 years of suppressed joy. But this wasn't the chaotic screaming that had driven researchers mad. This was pure, focused healing energy that transformed everything it touched. In the hydroponics bay, plants that had been struggling in artificial environments suddenly flourished beyond anything in the agricultural databases. Earth tomatoes grew alongside Centauri grain fruit and Altarian spice moss, creating impossible hybrid ecosystems that should have been competing, but instead supported each other in perfect symbiosis. The station's life support systems, which had been operating at 60% efficiency due to aging infrastructure, suddenly jumped to 150% capacity. Water recycling units that had required constant maintenance began purifying themselves. Even the artificial gravity generators, which had been experiencing harmonic instability, smoothed out into perfect operation. But the most remarkable changes were happening to the people themselves. Dr. Martinez, who had been suffering from chronic pain due to a shuttle accident years earlier, found herself completely healed. Commander Torres, despite his suspicions, reported that his stress-related insomnia had vanished. Throughout the station, people were discovering that old injuries were mending, chronic illnesses were fading, and their mental clarity was sharper than it had been in years. "It's not just physical healing," Dr. Chun reported to the emergency council session. "Psychological evaluations show reduced anxiety, improved cognitive function, and increased empathy across the board. Whatever this creature is doing, It's optimizing human biology at a cellular level. The Void Stalker fleet surrounding the station had begun to sing in harmony with their rescued kin, creating a chorus that could be heard across the star system. But they weren't just singing. They were working. The massive beings were extending themselves into space, creating living networks that connected to the station's external systems, and began repairing decades of accumulated damage. Jamie stood in the observation deck, watching as one of the creatures, easily the size of a small ship, delicately adjusted the station's solar collectors with appendages that moved like a pianist's fingers. The being's bioluminescent patterns were constantly shifting, and Jamie was beginning to understand that each pattern was a different form of communication. "They're talking to the station," he told Dr. Martinez, who had joined him at the viewing port. "Not just to us, but to the machines, the plants, even the air recycling systems. Everything's alive to them." Dr. Martinez nodded, her expression filled with wonder. "The quantum biologists are going crazy trying to understand it. They seem to communicate through some kind of harmonic resonance that affects matter at the subatomic level. They're not just healing, they're teaching our technology how to heal itself." But not everyone was celebrating. The Heralds of the Void had established a shrine in one of the station's cargo bays, where they spent their time in meditation, claiming to receive visions from the cosmic gardeners. The Archon preached that humanity's destiny was to serve the Void Stalkers, helping them spread their influence throughout the galaxy. Meanwhile, Admiral Reeves was coordinating with military forces from 3 different species, convinced that the Void Stalkers represented a form of biological warfare that would eventually consume all sentient life. "Look at the transformation rate," he argued during heated council sessions. "If this spreads beyond the station, it could affect entire worlds. We might be witnessing the end of technological civilization as we know it." The debate came to a head when long-range sensors detected something unprecedented. Dead worlds throughout the galaxy were beginning to show signs of life. The Void Stalker's song was propagating through subspace, reaching their scattered kin and awakening them from centuries of dormancy. "It's already too late to contain this," Dr. Kim announced. "We're detecting biological activity on 17 worlds that have been barren for millennia. The network is rebuilding itself." Jamie found himself at the center of the crisis. As the only human who had established a direct connection with the Void Stalkers, he was the key to understanding their intentions. The creature in the containment facility, which had now been released and was free to roam the station, seemed to seek him out, following him through the corridors like a massive, gentle pet. "What do they want?" Ambassador Zefkar asked during a private meeting with Jamie and his parents. "What is their ultimate goal?" Jamie closed his eyes, feeling the creature's presence like a warm current in his mind. The answer came not in words, but in images, visions of worlds transformed, of ecosystems in perfect balance, of species working together instead of competing. But there was something else, something the adults weren't seeing. "They're not trying to control us," Jamie said. "They're trying to save us from ourselves. They know something we don't, something about what happens when civilizations get too advanced without learning to take care of their environments." The revelation came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kim's archaeological team had been analyzing the ruins of the dead worlds, and they discovered a pattern that chilled everyone who heard it. Every civilization that had reached a certain level of technological development without maintaining ecological balance had collapsed within a few hundred years. "It's a universal pattern," Dr. Kim explained. "Species develop faster than light, travel, establish galactic trade networks, exploit resources across multiple worlds, and then extinction. Every time." The Void Stalkers weren't just gardeners. They were trying to prevent this cycle. The implications were staggering. Humanity and its galactic neighbors were following the same path that had led to the destruction of dozens of civilizations. The Void Stalkers weren't invaders. They were the galaxy's immune system, trying to restore balance before it was too late. So, what happens now? Jamie asked. The answer came from the Void Stalkers themselves. Through their song, they communicated. A simple message. The choice was humanity's. They could continue down the path of exploitation and competition, eventually joining the Dead Worlds as another failed civilization. Or they could learn to work with the galaxy's natural systems, becoming partners in the Great Growing Dot, as Jamie stood on the observation deck, watching the Void Stalkers tend to their cosmic garden. He understood that he had been part of something much larger than feeding a lonely creature. He had helped awaken a force that could heal the galaxy, if sentient beings were wise enough to accept the gift. The story of the boy who fed the alien beast would become legend, but the real story was just beginning. Across the galaxy, worlds were awakening to a new kind of consciousness, one that recognized the connection between all living things. The age of the Void Stalkers had returned, and with it, the possibility of a future where compassion truly could transcend fear. In the thin end, what had seemed unbelievable became the foundation of a new reality, one where the most dangerous act had indeed become the most necessary one, and where a 12-year-old boy's simple act of kindness had helped heal a galaxy that had forgotten how to listen to its own song.